Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining. I'm very excited to talk to Zuby Onwuta today. He's a Vitalize Angels member that I've had the pleasure of meeting and getting to know over the past few months. And I'm super excited to talk to him today because he's paving the way for disabled innovators. But my intro can't do him any justice. So Zuby, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon from Austin, Texas. It's a pleasure to be here with you, Larissa, and other members of Vitalize Angels. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I'm currently an EIR at the Verizon Forward for Good Accelerator that focuses on disability innovation. I help disability tech innovations startups with product innovation and access to funding as well as founder development. Before that, I was an inclusive innovator in residence at 2GI Tech Accelerator with support from Google for Startups. And before that, I guess I did various things. I was once in pre-med, I was once in the military. I became legally blind and disabled. So I had to exit both of those. I studied computer engineering. I worked couple times for Lucent Alcatel, now Nokia, did full stack web dev for them. I worked for Goldman Sachs a couple of times. I wrote software that calculates all of the company's electronic stock trade. It was at $300 million per day back then, over 20 years ago. And then I worked at IBM. I was leading global teams in file systems, making sure all of enterprise customers' file systems were always available. So Bank of America, NASA, Bloomberg, Boeing, the White House, whenever they needed their files, we served it up to them, quickly. And then I left corporate and started focusing on solving disability problems. And the journey to that was because of my own personal experience, having 3 inherited retinal disorders. Cost me a lot of chaos and a lot of setbacks. And so I wanted to rewrite my personal story for a better outcome. I decided to start tackling disability innovations. And I patented and invented a solution that reads human brainwaves to be able to control electronic devices, magnify things that you look at, or screen read, meaning convert text to audio. And I didn't understand that it was the deep end of technology entrepreneurship, and so I kicked off my study into technology entrepreneurship from MIT with Bill Olet to Harvard Business School Disruptive Strategies with Clayton Christensen, Harvard Medical with Eric von Hippel, and Venture Capital Fellowship, Mass Challenge, Health Tech. So in all of these areas, all of these places I went to learn two things. I was always the only person with a disability, and I was always the only person with a startup idea focusing on the disabled. And so all of those experiences have now shaped what I'm doing today, which is, helping bring disability inclusion into the technology and innovation space in various ways, whether it be, providing support to disabled innovators or just innovators who want to solve disability problems, or finding access to funding for them. So that's what I do now. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Well, that's a lot to unpack there. You're very accomplished. I love speaking to you. So you tell us more about Think and Zoom. So it's a mind-controlled software that you developed after you became visually impaired?
Yes. One of the problems that people who are visually impaired experience is nobody believes they're visually impaired. You see me wearing a pair of glasses, and so it's always throws people off. But these are problems that can occur at the back of your eye, your retina, and so the light photons that are supposed to send signals through the retina, where the retina converts them to electrical signals and to the brain to interpret. Well, if the retina itself is damaged, then signal is not passing through, and so you're not seeing very well. Whether there's no visible, whether there's nothing visible to show to the outside world or not, doesn't really matter. The individual is suffering. And the only way that people like myself cope with everyday tasks are either leveraging magnifiers, things to make things bigger, bring the image closer to you, or leveraging these things called screen readers or text to audio to grab all text materials and convert it to audio so you can listen to it. I've been using both for the last 2 decades. That's the only way that I can consume content. There's no other way. I haven't found another way yet. But these things are manually operated, and what it does is that manual operation slows down the individual. We're in a very fast-paced, dynamic, fast-moving world, right? And so with more and more things that are being thrown at us, we want to do more and more, but these limitations slow down the person. They're not able to produce as much as their peers. And so I just thought of a way to leverage our naturally occurring human brainwaves. They're already in our cranium due to the fact that the 80 billion neurons that control our thoughts, emotions, and behavior are all talking to each other via electrical impulses. And so I just found a way to tap into those electrical impulses and use that as a cue to send to the assistive device and signal to the device that, hey, I'm struggling to see, help me out. And so that's really the background, the context of what Think and Zoom really is. And so it's the ability to be able to look, think, and zoom in to see better.
That's so cool. I know when we talked prior, you said, so you're the founder and CEO and patent inventor of this. What were the hardships when it came to trying to build this and talking to investors and trying to pitch it?
On one hand, it's just the understanding, awareness. Like I mentioned, one of the problems is trying to, talk to society about blindness is most people don't understand it. Everyone thinks blindness is always the person with the white cane or the guide dog. But, only about 5% of the blind population are actually totally blind. It's a spectrum, just like autism is a spectrum, just like deafness, hard of hearing is a spectrum. Most disabilities are a spectrum. And so there are different levels of it, low vision, legally blind, etc. And so when I now show up to talk about blindness to people who don't understand blindness, and then I'm trying to tell them that I myself have the lived experience, that it really throws people off. And then the second thing is brain-computer interface. It's still a new technology, still emerging technology. I spoke on a panel last year at Remarkable Tech Australia, and the panel was titled BCI, Science or Science Fiction. And I was speaking alongside Neuralink, Elon Musk's company, and Synchron that had just raised $15 million at that time for implantable BCI. And so society still doesn't truly, fully believe in BCI. So now when you put both things together, so this piece of technology that society hasn't quite wrapped its head around, and blindness, which society doesn't really understand, it was really quite challenging, just to convince people of it. But then there are other things like the support system. I still haven't found disabled people or blind people that are innovating in neurotechnology. and if you can't find your tribe, people who you have something in common with, it makes it harder to be able to innovate. And then comes the capital. There's just a lack of funding for assistive tech, and things like policy. For whatever reason, medical insurance doesn't cover blind assistive tech. It looks at it as, it likes to cover the curative, but not the functional. So things that can make you be able to go to school or do some work, it wouldn't cover that. So those were just a few of the barriers that I ran into.
Yeah, I remember at Vitalize, we were all about inclusivity and getting more diversity into check writing. So when we first talked and you said that there are no investors that you're really familiar with that invest in disability tech or disabled investors, and I thought, no, that can't be true. But then I put it out on Twitter. I asked multiple places, and no one gave me a straight answer. I was really shocked. And do you know why this is, or how we could bring more of these kind of people or inventors to the table?
Yeah, it's a sad situation that we currently live in, but the hope is that slowly but surely it will start changing. There's a phrase, just negative stigma, right? There's a huge negative stigma that is associated with disability, and it's sad, but it's still the way that things are. Society has a very low expectation of people who are disabled. And society shuns people who are disabled from certain sectors like STEM, science, technology, and innovation. Um, a pervert who is deaf, hard of hearing, wrote to NASA that he wanted to be an astronaut. He was turned down simply because he was deaf, hard of hearing. He didn't even get to all of the other requirements. It's just shunned simply because of his disability. And today he's a 3-time a mission director at NASA and still works at NASA. And I'll mention him later on. So that's just the way things are. But lately things have been slowly turning around. Elon Musk, over the last couple of years, disclosed he has Asperger's. Richard Branson of Virgin Group disclosed he has dyslexia. I think half of the investors on Shark Tank have disclosed that they have one kind of disability or another. And so we need to build, a community of both investors who have a disability, who understand the lived experiences. It's not just the having the disability, but it's understanding those pain points, those day-to-day challenges, and that lived experience that is very vital, that can then be infused into the innovation and solutions. And then also just investors who want to invest in disability problems, in disability innovations and disability solutions. And I think if we're able to build that community, then that community will in turn then mentor innovators who want to solve these problems. Those innovators could be those with a disability and bringing their personal lived experience into the problem solving process, or just innovators who are curious. For instance, there are patient innovators. One very famous one is Dana Lewis. She has diabetes and was able to put together a team of other people with diabetes and software engineers. And they were able to do something amazing that the medical community had never been able to do. They built an artificial pancreas. Imagine that, right? And then there are family caregiver innovators like Andreas Forsland. His mom was, sadly was in the hospital for an extended period of time. And Andreas was the one caring for her, always sitting by her bedside. And there were all these, tubes coming out of her, and she couldn't, speak. Tubes coming out of her mouth, she couldn't speak, so she lost the ability to speak. So he was, he became her translator. And well, that was the inspiration that fueled him to now start a company called Cognition. And he had to pitch to, get ready for this, 200 venture capital firms, 200. To be able to raise a seed funding for this next generation medtech device that can allow anyone that is experiencing the inability to speak to be able to wear this sort of VR headset thing and be able to carry on communication and conversation with other people. So hopefully there will be more Andreases. Hopefully there'll be more stories like that of Dana. Hopefully, there'll be more people who reveal that, yes, they do have a disability. But I think that, we need more of that to be able to help tackle some of the problems we have today.
And I looked into futureofdisability.global. This is your organization, correct? And so you're trying to highlight and interview innovators in this space. Could you tell us more about what you're doing with that, or what you've done in the past with it too?
Yeah, so when I started on my journey of, trying to bring neurotech into the disability space, not finding people who had a disability and who were solving their disability problem. It baffled me, right? It's like, imagine if Silicon Valley didn't have all those Sam Altmans and Reid Hoffmans always there to mentor and advise you and guide you and help you move forward. And so I had to start searching, far and wide around the globe, and I started discovering them. Take, for instance, the story of Yuma Dekal, who is totally blind, but it didn't stop him from completing a degree in machine learning and artificial intelligence. It didn't stop him from starting a company that developed a digital tape for people who are blind. So people who are blind can't use the regular, physical tape, but he developed a digital tape that has won an award from James Dyson, the James Dyson Award. And then it didn't stop him from developing an astronomy application that can allow blind people to explore the universe. And this application has won an award at NASA. And then people like Marx. Marx is from the Philippines, and Marx has created this pair of smart glasses, a prototype, but still you wear the smart glasses, and because he's blind, as he's moving around, whenever it detects an obstacle, it vibrates on his nostrils, so he's able to avoid the obstacle.
Wow.
Calvin Crosby, another blind individual, after being hit 3 times by cars at night, he's developed these, it looks like a lightsaber, like the Star Wars lightsaber. So it's a glowing white cane. So it glows in the dark. So nobody else can hit him. And anybody else who is blind and uses a white cane can use that. And many others, Saida is running in Manico. Saida is deaf, hard of hearing. For those who are deaf and hard of hearing, this COVID situation exposed something. You attend all these Zoom calls, video calls, right? If the host does not turn on transcription, you're toast. There is no way for you to know what is going on. No way. So Saida has leveraged, her personal experience and infused that into this amazing piece of innovation at her company called Imanica, and her solution is called Communify. So on one hand, it gives the user their own personalized transcription. You don't have to wait for somebody else to turn on transcription. It's on a mobile app. And on the other hand, she's actually found a way to take diarization. It's called speech input diarization, take it to the next level, meaning she can actually separate who's speaking, and she nicely color codes it. So you can actually tell who's speaking.
Wow, and you interviewed all these people. Feel free, if anyone has questions, please jump in and ask him. I could talk to Zuby all day. We do have regular Zoom meetings. I love chatting with you. So anyone can just hop on. If not, you're also, oh, go ahead.
Hi there.
Yeah.
Hi, Zuby.
Hi.
Quick question for you. So just curious, what's your personal goal with building disability-focused tech, and what niches of this market would you like to see better served?
Currently, I'm focused on bringing capital and innovation. A little bit of context. So population-wise, disability affects about 15% of the Earth's population. That's over 1 billion people, and they deal with a 50% unemployment rate, globally. Here in the US, there are estimates that if we can just get just 1% of our disabled population into the workforce, we can improve our GDP by $25 billion, just 1%. So I've always been in tech and innovation. I do advocacy, but I'm a follower when it comes to advocacy and policy and things of that nature. But when it comes to tech and innovation, I believe that, it's time for us to unleash the power of, all of the technology that we have at our fingertips today. At OpenAI, you can write just a 1-line sentence and it will give you a blog, right? But yet we have wheelchairs that cost $30,000 to $90,000. It's time for us to democratize access here in America. Despite an almost $16 billion market, about roughly 70 to 80% of people who need assistive devices still cannot access it. They still cannot access it. And the market is growing at roughly 5%. I think globally, assistive tech devices will reach roughly $35 billion by 2030. And in the global size of the disability economy, disabled people and their families is roughly about $8 trillion. And so it's, for me personally, it's time to unleash the tech and innovation that we have on these problems so that people can have more meaningful life, so that I can have a more meaningful life. I am also a consumer of these innovations.
Yeah. We have a question from Julie and then Vic.
Yep. Hey, Zuby, thanks for joining. So I just had a question around, for me, accessible tech has kind of two layers, one being the screen reader magnification white cane, but the second level being things, that technology has really advanced, things like Uber, Grubhub, Lyft, that although aren't just for the, disabled community, but are, for the community as a whole, and are really, really helpful, just so happens for people with disabilities. How do you encourage founders to think about accessibility from the ground up?
So I know Julian, and Julian is someone who is visually impaired. Despite that, he is doing an amazing job at Goldman Sachs, and he's a venture capital fellow. So Julian, you're right. You have to come to the talk at 500 startups to listen to me talk about that, but you're absolutely right. One is assistive technology. That is the technology that is designed specifically for somebody who is disabled. But the other is an accessible solution. And what is the difference? Well, let me use a wheelchair. For those who are mobility impaired, sure, they need things like a wheelchair. That's the only way they can move around. They are not able to walk. But what about a building? A building, they need a ramp. So now they need access into that building. And it might surprise you that today there are still some buildings who don't have access. They don't have a way for a wheelchair user to get into the building. And through the work I'm doing at Future of Disability, I came across the story of Sasha Blair Goldenson. So most people don't know that majority of the disabled population didn't become disabled at birth. It happens after birth, either through some kind of a genetic disorder, maybe an illness, or maybe through an accident. So Sasha's problem happened through an accident, and he became a wheelchair user. And he works at Google, and he would go to places, and he lives in New York, and he wouldn't be able to get into the place. So using his Google 20% time, he built a team of engineers. They leveraged Google local groups, and they started crowdsourcing information of wheelchair accessible locations. And then he pitched it to Google Maps. So today, if you see wheelchair accessible locations on Google Maps, that's the work of Sasha, and that is the power of a disabled innovator. Wheelchair has been around for, 50, 60 years or more. There are 65 million wheelchairs around the world, but it took a disabled innovator to spot the problem and work to solve the problem, because they too will experience that solution. They too will leverage that solution. So that's why I'm really, really very passionate. You can tell from my voice that I truly believe that the future of disability lies in disabled innovators.
Thank you for that question, Julian. Julie?
Yes, no problem.
I want to thank you, Zuby, because I have a friend who is visually impaired, and he wears glasses, and so people just assume that the glasses solve the visual impairment, and the glasses just help him, but he has to kind of get in your face, get really close. He can't really see super well, so take transit, things like that. So I really do appreciate those comments, and I also really appreciate, like, as you were talking about kind of the glasses that would shake your nose, or the or kind of the work that you've done, how I think so often, if some of these things can seem like toys, like they seem like, hey, let's play with this, versus what you've really shown me is when it's coming from a disabled person, it's not a toy, it's an instrument that then the rest of us might find that's kind of cool to see the things that could we might find that we need some of that access into, it's the same way kind of Zoom gave us the ability to work anywhere and do things that we didn't really some people didn't understand until they actually could use it. So I really, really appreciate that. And it does make me feel, I mean, you have sold me. I think that absolutely, I want, there are people who understand culture. I want leading cultural change, cultural work. And there are people who understand access. I want leading access work versus people who have spent a lot of time limiting access, making decisions about more access work. So I think it's really important. The other thing is just, I don't know if you know, do you know Devo Harris, who's got a company called Adventure? ADVENTR. And Adventure, his company is a lot about interactive video. And so the idea might be that you can speak to the video, kind of like you can speak into your remote now these days. And so his videos, he's got the patents where you could say, I'd like that item in green. And then the video can kind of say, okay, well, we can find, you can go to Target or whatever. They can kind of have an ad where you can pick out what you want through your voice. And he would be, I think he might be an interesting partner to consider. So it's Devo Harris, and the company is ADVENTR. And so listen out for him, keep out for him, because I think that y'all might be two great minds together that could do some really cool things.
That's amazing. I wrote that down.
Oh, thank you so much, Larissa. I was just going to ask you to type it in the chat, please. And thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And I am one of those two that puts my nose in the screen, but just to not scare anybody off at the call, I'm leaning back. But that's right. The glasses, throws people off. And there are so many instances. Even on my way to go speak at the UN Social Goods Summit in Nairobi, Kenya, I had a situation at the airport where, the lady said, well, you don't look blind. Maybe next time travel with your blind papers. And that cost me an extra $500 to buy another ticket because they didn't believe that I didn't see very well. So it causes a lot of, negative situations for the disabled person. But I think that, the more we explain these situations, the more we educate, the public. Because to be fair, unless you are in the situation, it's hard to conceive, just to wrap your mind around the fact that someone is wearing a pair of glasses and they still can't see very well. It took me years to even understand it myself. So
thanks for that question, Julie. All right, in your comment, I loved it. Vic, go ahead.
Yeah. Hey guys. Hey again. Thanks so much, Zuby. Incredible story. I love Think and Zoom. I've just been on the website, and funny enough, actually, I've used myself the Neurosky Mindwave. I used to work at Singularity University, and one of the things that we used to do in the tech lab, we would hack things together. So for participants to show like how some of the ways that you can use tech for good, we had a demo where when you focus, we had it programmed to like a little robot. So when you focus, the robot would go straight. When you're like not focused, it would just go in circles. So, but I love like how you connected it to Google Glass. Like that's such a cool like off-the-shelf solution. Like where you don't have to have any custom hardware or anything like that. You just connect it to different hardware products and make it work. That's really awesome. And in general, I'm based in the Bay Area, so a lot of my friends are software engineers, and sometimes we talk about different stuff, product design, and a lot of people underestimate and don't even know what is accessibility in product design, and how it's just like neglected especially in startups, where they just don't have the resources to make good user experience at a product design and include accessibility as part of their roadmap. And in general, we're just talking, and a lot of my software engineers, obviously in the Bay Area, a lot of their kids go and like take programming classes and start coding at a very early age, age. So I was talking to one of my friends, and we're talking about accessibility and visually impaired kids and how like they might be able to access this. So he actually started working on something that he's trying to basically bring coding, like helping kids to introduce them to coding through video, through an audio and like a camera, like QR codes. So I guess like the question that I would like to ask, and just like in general, hear your thoughts about, would parents of kids be interested in their kids like learning programming, like kids that they're visually impaired, or do you think that's more of like a later stage, like at a teen level, or like even after that? And do you think in the future we'll see software engineers that are like teams of software engineers that are like visually impaired or like have some sort of disability, but can fully be integrated in a part of like a regular software engineering team? Thank you.
Wow. Thanks
I
so
know that
much.
was a lot.
Yeah, thanks so much. Regarding young kids that are blind learning to code, Apple beat you to that. I think it was 2018. Sarah Hellinger, who is the director of accessibility at Apple, led her team to Austin, Texas. There's a school for the blind here called Texas School for the Blind and Visually Impaired. It's for 18 and under. I went to the one across the street called Chris Core, which is for 18 and older. And so when they arrived at the school for the visually impaired, they were kicking off their campaign called, I think, Everyone Can Code. And so they brought kits that could help these blind young students learn how to code. So, that's already been happening. And then regarding integrating software engineers who are blind into the workforce, again, that has already been happening. I know Jim Schaefer, when I started in IBM back in 2004, Jim went blind very early in life. So he learned Braille, and it was amazing. I was watching him, and he could write code using Braille. And then there's another gentleman, Michael. He wrote code using text to audio. So he would wear these headphones and will use a screen reader which reads out. And so, you're seeing left bracket open, code is coming out in audio. I tried it and my head almost exploded. But then, there's Saqib Shaikh of Microsoft, who is on the founding team of Microsoft's application for blind people called Seeing AI. And he's been on stage a few times with Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft. So Saqib is really, really well known. There's also another gentleman that leads Facebook's accessibility, used to work at IBM. So there are quite, of course, not a lot, but there are a few, blind engineers in the workforce. I think society doesn't, understand that. And so a lot of times, blind people who want to get into this space face, unnecessary barriers. And there are even countries that don't even teach blind people math. And if somebody excludes you from math, how are you going to get into computer science? That would be very, very challenging. And so I think it's just an issue of, removing these unnecessary barriers. And when somebody who's blind and visually impaired wants to code, it's not you can do it, it's more of how can you do it, and providing them with, be it access tools or be it mentors or be it a community of like-minded people, and they'll figure out a way to do it.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody. I know we went over a little bit, so thanks for staying. Sorry about that. I will share Zuby's information with everybody, and I will post this recording as well. Thank you so much for your time, Zuby. I could talk with you for another hour.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank
Everybody
you so
have a wonderful day.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.